people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It was officially announced earlier today that reigning WBA lightweight champion Stephanie Han will in fact be defending her title against Holly Holm early next year on the undercard of Serrano vs. Cruz 2 in San Juan, Puerto Rico. This is what I always thought would happen. Now both Stephanie and Holly have already made their MVP debuts. They've already boxed once under the banner, and now they are set to box each other. Stephanie Han, 35 years old, standing in at 5'7". Holly Holm, 44 years old, standing in at about 5'8". Holly is a southpaw, whereas Stephanie Han is an orthodox fighter. 9 years younger than Holly Holm, though noticeably greener as a professional, having only 11 professional bouts. To Holly Holm's 39, sporting a professional record of 34 wins with 2 losses and 3 draws, 9 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 39 professional bouts. It's safe to say that Holly Holm is many times more experienced than Stephanie Han as a professional. More fights, more rounds in the bank against better fighters than any of the fighters that Stephanie Han has fought so far. So the edge and experience has to go to Holly. Stephanie Han sporting an unblemished record of 11 wins with no losses and no draws, 3 knockouts. Noticeably greener than Holly Holm, was last in action in August of this year opposite the ring Paulina Angel, suffering an early scare in what was her MVP debut, getting knocked down early in the fight, though picking herself up, dusting herself off, and going on to pile up the points, pile up the rounds, and keep the WBA title that she will now be defending against Holly. This is what I always thought would happen. Stephanie Han is the most beatable champion of the 4 current champions in the lightweight division, not because she isn't good, but because she's not that experienced. Given that Holly Holm can make herself a notoriously tricky target to pin down, I'm leaning towards Holly to win the fight. Win the fight on her toes, sticking the jab out there, and moving around. I believe that Holly will force Stephanie Han to fight her fight, to chase her, allowing Holly to set her up for straight punches, counters, combinations. Like what she just did to Yolanda Vega this past June, I expect her to do the same thing to Stephanie Han. But because Stephanie Han is a better fighter than a Yolanda Vega, there is room for it to be competitive. There is room for things to get spicy. This will be the second unbeaten fighter that Holly Holm will have faced in succession since returning to the sport after a 12-year hiatus, more than a decade away from her last fight. Holly showed that she's still got it, and she's going to bring it to the fight with Stephanie. So I am leaning towards Holly Holm to effectively lift the WBA title from Stephanie Han, and what she'll do after that, she will likely then look to unify titles with Terry Harper, this division's reigning WBO champion that still has yet to make her MVP debut. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting the winner of Holm versus Han to move on and take on Terry Harper. Perhaps Terry will make her MVP debut on this show or another MVP show in the coming calendar year. We'll see. But that is how I see it. I have Holly Holm beating Stephanie Han by getting on the good foot, sticking the jab out there, and staying tricky. Holly Holm on points is the pick. Over to the continued fallout of the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fight's collapse. Assistant coach Kenny Ellis took to his social media and stated, Jake Paul found his way out, suggesting that the fight's cancellation isn't Gervonta Davis's fault, it's Jake Paul's. Why, is Jake Paul the one with an open domestic abuse case? Kenny Ellis continued, Netflix did not pull the fight. Jake Paul said it out the promotion that he was scared, more than ever before his last fight facing Gervonta Davis. The closer the fight got, the more reality was getting to him, so he put his scapegoat plan In effect,
Get your tinfoil hats out.
he was scared. He said it out of his own mouth over and over again. The fear was real.
And this girl claiming that Gervonta Davis dragged her out of her job, into the parking lot, punched her in the mouth. I suppose that has nothing to do with this fight's cancellation. It's all down to Jake being afraid of the twink.
The fuck is Kenny Ellis, retarded?
The idea that anyone is afraid of Gervonta Davis after so many fighters have spent so many years calling him out.
Yeah.
Anyone from Vasyl Lomachenko to Tevin Farmer to Teofimo Lopez,
Yeah.
George Kambosos, Devin Haney,
Yeah.
more recently Shakur Stevenson.
Nobody's afraid of Gervonta. Nobody was ever afraid of Gervonta. I don't think Jake Paul was afraid of him either. Being honest with you, not based on how Gervonta Davis looked in his last fight.
Kenny Ellis says that Netflix were not the ones who pulled the fight, but the official press release from MVP says otherwise. It says it right there in plain English in the first line. MVP and Netflix have announced that Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis will no longer be moving forward. And you'd have to be a blithering idiot to think that Gervonta Davis' latest domestic abuse case has nothing to do with that.
The only argument I see people making is that by now, Netflix and MVP were fully aware of Gervonta Davis's checkered past, though whatever he did in the past is not the same thing as having an open case now.
Shit isn't complicated.
Same way that Rolly Romero was pulled off of the Gervonta Davis fight due to assault allegations is the same way that Gervonta Davis is dealing with that now. Is the same way that screen actor Jonathan Majors was pulled off of all of those Marvel films due to assault allegations levied against him. This is not complicated. Major company, a brand, a big platform is not going to want to do business with somebody that has this kind of stuff going on right now. Still have some original thinkers and conspiracy theorists that think this fight was called off for any other reason than Gervonta Davis's latest domestic abuse case.
All right, so they cancelled the Jake Paul fight because of Tank being an abuser. Fucking okay. Do you believe that?
Yeah,
I don't believe that.
why not?
Put it this way, Tank has been known to fucking hit women since like 2022. If they fucking cared about that, they would not have done business with him.
See what I mean?
And you can't believe that because this is Netflix, who know about that, and Jake Paul, who knows about that. The only reason that they would cancel this event after everybody's trained and not put a replacement in when they had backups ready to go is low ticket sales.
What have we got here? Another original thinker that goes by the name Dame Margera, citing low ticket sales as the reason that either Netflix or MVP would have pulled the fight, not realizing Netflix is less concerned with gate revenue and more concerned with viewership, generating money from ad revenue due to a card's metrics. That's what they're concerned with, not how many tickets the event sold.
So many people that try to cover this sport come up with their own theories, don't understand its infrastructure and how these things work.
Netflix, as a platform, would not have called off an event like this after all the money they'd already spent because there is no standard percentage of gate revenue that goes to broadcast networks.
Their skin in the game is viewership, not gate receipts.
Instead of a fixed percentage of the gate, broadcast networks earn revenue primarily through pay-per-view sales, advertising, and licensing deals, with a portion of that revenue sometimes shared with the promoters and fighters.
The primary income for the broadcaster comes from pay-per-view sales and advertising during the event. This is often a separate revenue stream from the live gate. Now, in the case of Jake and Gervonta, which was not a pay-per-view, ad revenue was Netflix's skin in the game.
Major brands and companies paying for time to market their products during the broadcast. That was Netflix's skin in the game. So when you say that they pulled the plug on this thing due to low ticket sales, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
What about MVP?
Well, think about what Jake Paul would have had to pay out of pocket in camp costs. Look at the people that he was sparring. Former champion Raymond Ford, former champion Keyshawn Davis, former champion Shakur Stevenson.
These guys ain't cheap.
Or do people not realize that you have to pay for sparring partners? And depending on who those sparring partners are, it can get expensive. You mean to tell me that he paid those guys?
They're all southpaws, by the way, just like Gervonta. Suppose that's a coincidence, too.
He paid out all that money for sparring just to pull out. Netflix paid out all that money for promotion.
Just to pull the plug? Or is it more likely than not that a serial domestic abuser who once again got in trouble for domestic abuse is the reason the show was canceled? The people making this low ticket sales argument themselves are acknowledging that Gervonta Davis has a long history of battering women.
So that when he batters another woman in the buildup of this show, you're wondering why it got called off? You think this is about low ticket sales? What the fuck, are you, a moron?
This guy thinks it's low ticket sales. Kenny Ellis says that it's because Jake was scared.
Now, I ain't no New York City detective, but I'd wager that having an open domestic abuse case, an active case, having these kinds of allegations levied against you here and now,
that'd get the fight called off. And it did get the fight called off.
I do think this hurts Gervonta Davis a lot more than it hurts Jake Paul, because Jake will continue to do business with Netflix, but they will not do business with him.
This was his alternative to all the fights, all the fighters that he's been running from, dealing with Jake. And now that he can't do that, you don't turn around and face the winner of Cruz versus Roach and make the same money you would have made with Jake. No, the only way you can get at that kind of money, if you're lucky, is fucking with the Turk.
$30 or $40 million, there's only one other person in the industry right now handing out that kind of moolah.
That kind of scratch, and that's Turkey LL Sheik. But of course, you know what kind of fights he'd want to put you in for that kind of money. You don't turn around now and fight an Isaac Cruz in a rematch or a Lamont Roach and generate that kind of dough.
No, and you won't get it boxing a 47-year-old Manny Pacquiao either. It's the funniest thing that so many, even Gervonta Davis's own fans, are citing low ticket sales as the reason that the event was scrapped, but I thought he was the face of boxing.
Isn't that what you guys have been running around saying for years? I even saw some people saying that this event with Gervonta and Jake would eclipse Canelo's fight with Terrence Crawford on this same platform. But I never heard in the buildup of Canelo and Crawford that the tickets weren't selling.
Not once.
So get your fucking narratives in order. You guys have been telling us for years that this butterball is the face of boxing. Then why weren't the tickets selling?
Since that's why you think this event got called off, low ticket sales, I thought he was the face of boxing. And you tell me that if it were Canelo Alvarez that Jake were about to fight, and not Gervonta Davis.
Do you think they would have had this problem? This low ticket sales problem or this domestic abuse problem?
I don't think so. So get your fucking narratives in order. Gervonta Davis is not, nor has he ever been, the face of boxing, and these low ticket sales are the proof.
As if we don't have enough.
Though low ticket sales aside, that's not the reason that this event got called off. This event got called off because this guy likes hitting women. I don't know why so many people are trying to gloss over that.
Says a lot about you. What says a lot about him? That you think that's some small thing that can be overlooked. Even though other events in the sport of boxing have been called off for that same reason.
Says a lot about Coach Kenny Ellis that he's trying to convince people fear is the reason it got scrapped.
Because Jake is so scared of Gervonta. I'm sorry to break the news to you, but
nobody's scared of Gervonta. I don't think for a second Jake would have sacrificed $40 million for fear of the twink.
Get fucking real.
In men's junior middleweight news, Vergil Ortiz reminds everyone he said yes to Jaron Ennis' fight. Can't say that he's ducking. Vergil Ortiz insists it's entirely up to Jaron Boots Ennis whether or not they'll fight early next year. Ennis has repeatedly said since he demolished Usman Lima in the first round October 11th that he wants Ortiz next. Ortiz isn't convinced that's true, even though Ennis is expected to sit ringside for Ortiz's fight this weekend. Eddie Hearn, Ennis' promoter, has questioned Ortiz's willingness to embrace one of the most intriguing fights in boxing based on comments made by Ortiz's manager, Rick Mirrigan, and trainer, Robert Garcia. Ortiz reminded Kellerman and Coppinger, however, that Ennis is the one who wanted a tune-up fight in his junior middleweight debut, rather than opposing Ortiz in the Philly native's first fight after relinquishing his Ring Magazine, IBF, and WBA welterweight titles. I don't know, Ortiz said. there's really nothing else I can do at this point, right? So the barrier, it's somewhere on the other side. Whether it's someone, something, or some amount of money, I don't know. That's completely on them. Retired running back LaShawn Shady McCoy, a regular panelist on Inside the Ring, then asked Ortiz to explain why he and Ennis have yet to fight. As far as the negotiation, I'm not the manager, right? So I don't take part in any of that, Ortiz said. All I know is that we can start from the beginning. 147, you know? We're both upcoming prospects or whatever. The fight doesn't happen. I always felt like it was gonna happen at junior middle anyways. Alright, I move up to 154. Past rhabdomyolysis. I had to get in a couple of tune-up fights because I just came back from a life-threatening illness. And we really wanted to make sure that I was still okay to fight, because that's how bad it was. So I got those fights out of the way. Then we fight Sergey Boachuk. Then Israel Madrimov. Jaron Ennis got a world title at 147, or a couple of them, I think. Good for him. He has a lot of momentum going his way. If I had that much momentum, I would have went straight to the big fights at 154. If I'm being honest, I'm just that kind of guy, I guess. But when it was time to say yes to the fight, I was the only one. A lot of people that were saying that I was ducking at 147 when there was no fight to be offered or anything like that. The only times the fight has ever been offered to either of us, I said yes. So when people are saying ducking, when they align that word with me, if they want to align it with him, they should. I don't care about that. But they want to align it with me, then they can't say that because I said yes.
He's not lying. We all know what the reports were a few months ago. The fight was on offer to Boots, and he said no because he was still trying to become undisputed champion at welterweight. But that's the past.
Yeah.
And the past is in the past.
Yeah.
We're in the here and now.
I'm not saying that Vergil Ortiz ducked Jaron Ennis. I'm saying that he might. I'm saying that I don't know how committed either Ortiz's promoter or Ortiz's manager are to doing that fight now. That's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying. That even if he wins on Saturday, and wins in good fashion, don't be surprised if you hear about some injury afterwards. Something that would prevent him from fighting Boots here and now.
I ain't talking about the past. I'm talking about now. Yes, Boots rejected the fight before, and Vergil might reject it next. I remember when there was talk of rescheduling the fight. It was Rick Mirrigan, Vergil's manager, who blew off that idea. And I don't know why. I don't understand that. So you couldn't do it before. You can still do it now.
This isn't complicated. When two fighters want to fight, they're going to fight. And it is as simple as that. Vergil Ortiz is not some teen or some tween that he can't take a more active role in negotiations that involve him. That if you specifically, want Boots next, there's no reason you shouldn't get him.
You're 27 years old. You're not a little kid.
I'm not accusing Vergil of having ducked Boots. I never said he did. What I'm saying is, I don't know how committed his people are to that fight now.
That's what I'm saying.
So that if anything impedes a Boots fight after this weekend's Lubin fight, that will be confirmation of what I thought all along. We're not getting that fight early next year.
For whatever reason, whatever it is, I am not expecting that fight to happen in a timely fashion, and I suspect it's because the guys on Vergil's side don't want it, at least not now.